Welcome to WeeklyWed from Business School of AI. WeeklyWed is our happy place to share, learn, discuss, and explore. WeeklyWed occurs every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I'm your host, Yashaswini Vishwanath, and you can call me Yash. I'm logging from Bangalore, India, and I would like to know where you're all coming from. Please type away your name and location in the chat. We would like to get to know you better. I'm a data scientist who focuses on responsible AI. Also, I'm pursuing my master's in artificial intelligence from RAISE. At WeeklyWed, we empower and enable the audience to break into AI and to explore more of it. Generally, we host speakers from varied backgrounds working on AI and allied technologies. Today is a very special session which has 3 segments. One with Patrick Lynn. The second segment has my conference that I spoke at. And the third segment, we have Emma Liu. So all in all, let's start off. And just 1 second, I will share my screen. Let me know if you can see the screen.
Yes. To talk to us about how Patrick Lynn joining us here to talk to us about how machines see using our data, our cameras everywhere, and that's what machines are going to do. Let's unravel this a bit more. So let me bring Patrick here. Hi, Patrick. Thank you for joining us. How are you?
Hi, Sudha. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's a Friday, so it's a happy ending to the week, and we are going to flow off into the holidays, so I can't complain much. So Patrick is one of those inspiring people that I'm lucky that I got to know in the first place. And Patrick has written a book called Machine See, Machine Do. And let us find out a little bit more about Patrick, because you will share my excitement about, there is hope for the future with AI in what we are doing, the possibilities of where it is already and where it is going, and what is our role in it. So Patrick, tell us a little bit about your background, where you're coming from.
Absolutely, yeah. So I've been extremely interested and passionate about sort of this intersection of law and technology for a very long time now. And that's sort of where I've really invested my time and energy into researching. I'm currently in my final year of law school, and I, for whatever reason, thought, while in law school, that's the right time to write this book. And so I really want to share some of the lessons and experiences that I've had. And I think the real goal here is to show people that even though I think a lot of the most interesting work and research relating to AI and algorithmic bias, I think it can be really unapproachable. It can be a little difficult for, I think, the general public to engage with. And so I want to write a book that really is approachable and welcoming, and people can get a lot out of it. But I really
so let me get a copy of the book, because I was lucky that I didn't have to wait for it to go on Amazon because you ended up crowdfunding the book. So I was able to contribute to that. So I feel lucky about it. Let me share my screen so you can see what the book looks like. It says Machine See, Machine Do. Yeah. And here is Patrick Lim. So that's what it looks like. And hopefully, you will join me in getting a copy and enjoying the book. That's going to be my holiday read. So when you say you came from your experience, you told me you're a law college student, right? Where are you studying law? And when you're talking from your experience, you're not just talking about being a student. You've done more. I thought when I got to know you first, you were interning at ACLU. So tell me where you came from, tell me where you're studying, and where's your experience coming from?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, when I attended NYU for undergrad, and during my time there, I was interning with the Legal Aid Society of New York. And that was sort of my first time experiencing sort of how technology and science, I think, are used to kind of tech wash the way that we understand evidence and DNA. And even though we think of it as very infallible, there's actually a lot of flaws with the way that it's being used in the criminal justice system. And so in that space, I focused mostly on forensic evidence. And then that really, I think, was the start of it all, sort of my interest in this space. And so I spent a lot of time after that, researching and connecting with academics to better understand sort of the most important issues in this area right now. And so I'm currently in my last year of law school at Brooklyn Law School. And I've had the chance, as you said, to intern for organizations like the ACLU, where I've had the chance to meet really, really amazing advocates who are just so passionate about sort of understanding the way technology is being used, sometimes in very nefarious ways. And I've continued to work with organizations like For Humanity and I've connected with people at STOP as well in New York City. And so I just think it's a really exciting space right now. There's so much room for people who want to get involved and learn more and get involved.
So there's lots to unpack here. So your experience came from the forensic side, so I want to dig deeper more on that. But let's go back to what we all are seeing already out there. We are seeing cameras everywhere, and there is the AI in every system. It's kind of permeating us. The other day, I did a call to Chase Bank, my bank here, and in the customer service line, earlier they used to say, we are going to record your voice for quality assurance purposes. And we kind of, every time we pick it up, pick up the customer service line, this is one of those recurring lines, and we kind of become immune to that. What they've done this time is they said, we are recording your voice for identifying you later. And so it started off as if it's the same message. And then I jumped at it because I'm kind of tuned in, watching for AI everywhere. And I can tell you the common man out there is not going to even notice it or understand that now they're going to store this voice. They're going to find a pattern using machine learning and do a digital ID of my voice and then use it. And then where is this data sitting? What else are they going to do with it? It's a totally different game, but is there bias in the data? And what laws are allowing them to do this? It's just like, it opens, so much can of worms, which is like amazing for lawyers like you who are so socially conscientious about this. So this law, the whole AI being used in the criminal justice system did not start today, right? So I got a glimpse of your book, and one of the things that fascinated me, given my interest of data, is this is not something that somebody said, hey, here's a new technology and let's go do this, and started out. All AI is trained by data. So you make a nice historic connection. So tell us about the history of how we got us to this place, and then let's talk about where the criminal justice system is using this.
For sure. And I think the history is really, really important. I think like in any field or industry, our decision to use AI is ultimately like a cost saving measure, right? And we're looking for efficiency. We're looking to cut costs. We're looking to do things faster. And I think that's the same for criminal justice. I think the issue, though, is that when we use AI to do things like decide which neighborhoods to send police, to determine whether someone's innocent or guilty, and determine whether someone is at risk of committing a crime in the future. I think the issue there is that we often rely on historical data. And when we rely on yesterday's data, I think what happens is we have now suddenly created a system that is a loop, right? And so now, if we're just using historical data to make decisions about the future will just look a lot like the past.
We have spoken about feedback loop in here. So you take biased data and then you build AI, then it is going to be biased. And then you believe in that AI, you feed it back, and it is going to produce more bias, and it justifies it. So I come from technology industry, and I know people who mean well, but they want to do the logically right thing. And so they would argue, hey, if data is saying this, then I can fudge the data, right? So you're saying in the criminal justice system, since there's been bias against Black communities or poor communities, it has been propagated. And even in our hiring system against, women, there was this case from Amazon. So coming back, tell me a little bit about how the criminal justice system is using. Is it predictive policing, or is that in the court system already? Or is there another lawyer angle you can tell me of where else it is being used? Talk to me about that.
For sure. I think, and I think that is the extra layer of bias there, right? I think beyond just the fact that the data is historical and now we're just repeating that history, I think we need to also account for the fact that a lot of policing practices throughout history have also been prejudicial and have been used to target specific, communities, especially Black communities, Latinx communities, and poor communities. And so we're codifying those decisions. And so, for example, with predictive policing, right, we have computers who are that are using these predictive models to decide which neighborhoods to send police, so that supposedly police can use resources more efficiently and police, certain parts of a town or a city that are higher risk. But a lot of times, right, these programs are suggesting that those neighborhoods are where crime is expected to happen. And I think when that happens, you have police officers who are now, rather than looking to deter crime or address real crime, they're almost looking for crime that might not even be there. And I think that creates a very, adversarial relationship between the community and the police. I think that also erodes trust between the police and their communities. And I just don't think that that's a very beneficial use of that technology.
So you're making this look like we are already in the Minority Report.
Yeah, I think that's a common analogy. And I think it's looking very similar to that. And I think we're getting closer and closer to what that looks like.
So the organizations and the people who use this, are they aware of the bias, or they just say, here's a tool, I've been given that tool and I'm going to use it, and they trust it? What is the real state of the criminal justice system, the government organization, the social organizations, the prison system, the police, when they're using this? Do they just blindly believe it? Is there any check and balance, validating if there is bias?
Yeah, so I will say, I think it probably exists on a bit of a spectrum. I think there's a willful ignorance sometimes of not recognizing that maybe we're just blindly following this technology. There's a blind faith in that this is a technical or scientific or even mathematical process. Yeah. And so it must be objective, it must be fair. Yeah. And I think that's a trap, right? I think just because we're using these fancy models to determine something, that doesn't mean that it's infallible or that it's perfect. Yeah. But currently there really aren't that many checks and balances, certainly not at the federal level. There's no federal law governing how AI should be used or about what responsible technology looks like. And I think where we're seeing the most, impactful and important movement is actually at the state and city level, where a lot of states and cities have said, actually, we don't like the idea of the police using facial recognition to surveil people, to use cameras to store faces of our neighbors and people in our communities. And so a lot of cities and a lot of states have actually passed almost unanimously in most cases, bills or rules to say, we don't want the government to use certain technologies because it's untested, it's not safe, and we don't know what you're going to do with that data.
Yeah.
And I think until we have sort of a more standardized rule at the federal level, I think we kind of have to rely on this movement and in more local areas to sort of close that gap and address these concerns.
So I'm a big believer of technology can empower local communities, and the problem that a local city or even a part of a city, a neighborhood in a city is facing is going to be very different from a totally different city, even within our country here. So the same thing goes for policing the algorithms, I would say. So I'm happy to see that at a city level, there are ordinances and it's unanimous, means people are supporting it. And there is awareness, because I think that's a fundamental issue with this, right? Because I remember Professor Ayana Howard had published some research to show how, given a choice, people will trust the machine over the human. And we want the machine to succeed. It is there, we pay money for it to bring it into our life, and it looks cute. And there's even UX design to make it look cute so we can trust it. So trust is inherent with that devices and AI that powers it, which means we need to make sure that it is trustworthy, right? So what about a court system? Is there AI in our court system, and is that something judges follow? And are they also biased?
Yeah, I think the way that algorithms are used in the judicial system is also interesting and I think complicated, because historically we've always wondered about biases that judges have, right? Judges, right, are individuals with an immense amount of power who decide things like sentencing. How long someone, once they've been convicted, how long are they spending in prison, right? And this is an extremely impactful decision that affects not only that individual, but their family and their community. And so actually the way that algorithms are introduced as risk assessments, these are criminal risk assessments used in courthouses. The original intention was, how do we use this technology to address biases that might be introduced by humans, right? And so I think oftentimes we think about this technology as sort of coming in as an innocuous or even an aspirational purpose.
Yeah.
But the problem here too is that you're accounting for certain proxies that ultimately also include race as a component, right? Yeah. So when you consider things like socioeconomic status, even zip code, where someone lives, their level of education, their income, their employment status, these are all ultimately going to also be proxies for race as well. And so now when you're making a decision about whether someone should go home or go to jail before trial, whether someone is likely to succeed in a parole or probation program, right? These decisions are informed by systems that, again, rely on historical data, but also biases, because there's this proxy for race. And now you have this disparate impact issue as well. And
this proxy for race from a neighborhood is also something that's propagated from human bias. So I recently saw the movie King Richard, which is Serena Williams and Venus Williams' father's story. And they came from a poor neighborhood in LA. And when they tried to go get a coach and go to the affluent neighborhoods, as soon as they said they were from Compton, they were not willing to trust them, that they were not ready to trust that these two were world-changing athletes when they were kids, to spot the talent. So the whole story is about how the dad relentlessly went and found a coach and got them openings and stuff, So if they just look at the zip code, so now when the judges are deciding somebody's fate and they say, oh, that person comes from Compton or whatever other neighborhood like that, that's pretty unfair. So who is checking that it is fair for everybody? Because that's what law is about. It's what, a democracy is about.
Right. I certainly agree that the goal of the law is to close these gaps and to make things fair, but there currently isn't really any rule around this. It's truly an unregulated space. I think judges are also turning to these algorithms, as now they can say, if the public says, well, you actually got the case wrong, this person should not have been in prison, and if they get exonerated, now the judge can say, well, actually, I just relied on the algorithm. The algorithm said to give this sentence, and so it's not my fault, right?
So to some extent, even if the judge has a gut level thinking to explore an option that is different from the algorithm, now they have to decide against the algorithm. It's like when the whole jurors say one thing, the judge can still make a sentence differently. Now they have to, the algorithm has become the juror, and we didn't select it. It's not representative of us.
Right. It's an algorithm that's provided by a corporation that's designed, for the state. And yeah, there's also no way for us as the public to evaluate whether that algorithm is fair, or what sort of biases or what variables are even considered, right? And so I think you have a situation now where sentencing traditionally involves actually a judge listening to even family members coming to testify to say, actually, this person that you are going to sentence, he or she is an important part of our community. They have a family that relies on them, and these are all factors that are considered. And these are not like hard and fast variables. These aren't these are sort of more subjective qualifiers that an algorithm simply won't be able to account for.
Yeah.
And so it's difficult because humans have biases, but also technology won't know how to keep track of exceptions or to think about outliers.
Yeah. So no, I've heard of this in favoring the algorithm that, hey, this is a bias. So when there is a sexual assault case, they, instead of just hearing the victim, who typically is a woman, doesn't have to be, but most of the time they're women, they end up saying, hey, dig back into their past, what kind of habits they had, and what kind of outfit did they wear, and those are the biases the society brings. So I've heard the argument that algorithm is not going to care about those, but you're saying that algorithm totally flips it to the other end. We need something in the middle where it augments the human judgment, so the human can still be human, but then the algorithm should not bring its own bias. Talk to me about the forensic part, because I don't know anybody else who's worked in forensic department and who can talk tech. So you started out with it. So tell me, and that was your motivation to get into this field. So we're thankful for that. So talk to me a little bit about the forensic science and AI.
Yeah, I think forensic science is really interesting because I think it's become something through a lot of TV shows like CSI and all these different crime shows and these, police procedural shows, is that we think that it's foolproof. That when you have a DNA sample, it's, that will help you solve the crime 100% of the time. And there's a lot of really good value in DNA too. The Innocence Project, for example, helps to exonerate people using DNA evidence in a lot of cases. But the Innocence Project has also come out and said, actually, in something like almost 2/3 of the cases that they work on, people are actually put away because of improper use of DNA evidence and forensic evidence too. And so I see forensic evidence as a bit of this double-edged sword, where I think there are biases introduced by lab technicians. I think when there's situations where you're a lab technician, right? You're not even really, involved in the trial itself. But if you're told by the prosecutor's office, this is who we are trying to prosecute, this is the evidence that we have against them, things like that. Those considerations have been found to actually sway lab technicians' own conclusions. A lot of the testing that's used as well and the statistical models that are used to build a lot of this forensic analysis software also has its own biases. In the software that was used by New York City for a long time, for example, they actually had such a small sample size of Asian identifying DNA that actually, if you said that there was Asian, DNA samples in a DNA in a sample, it would actually reduce the likelihood that that person committed the crime or was present at the scene, because it's such a small representative sample. And so there's all these other factors, I think, and I think DNA is really interesting because it has been used for really, really, I think, positive things. but it's also being used in ways that are really improper too.
Yeah. And so that is the fascinating thing about your Machine See, Machine Do book, because you walk us through the history of how we got here, and then give us a taste of reality in so many different examples that we've been talking about. So it all comes back to some private companies building this stuff, and tech as I know it is not reflective of America or the world for that matter. And so what do you see is our role? I mean, is there anything, you said there's not much regulation, but there are some cities who are doing some regulation, and New York seems to be doing some lot of stuff. You are involved in something with New York, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. The organization I'm involved with is called For Humanity. And more recently, there's been a lot of movement around actually auditing bias that's found in algorithms used by private businesses, especially in the employment space, employment discrimination, and how that might affect women, people of color, and also individuals with disabilities, and how they are disadvantaged by that hiring process if they're relying on like an AI hiring tool, for example. But yeah, I think a lot of this technology is developed in private spaces, and I think while government, I think we have democratic processes that allow us to have some say in who is in power, what they get to do, and things like that. When technology is developed in conference rooms, in fancy tech startup campuses, things like that, we suddenly no longer have a view into what's being done. We don't have any say in how it's being built. And then when government comes and purchases that, again, we have no say in how it's being used. And I think there's when government, when law enforcement, when they use this technology, I think it can be very undemocratic, because all of a sudden you have this tool that is having a really profound impact on you, on me, on our communities, and we have no way of critiquing it or scrutinizing it.
Yeah, even when I was giving you that example, my bank is saying now they will record my voice, and my only option is to opt out and never talk to them for customer service, which seems pretty unfair. I have nowhere else to complain about it. I did go find them on Twitter. But when they record my voice, that's what I was thinking. And I'm a person who understands technology in all its depths and its implications. And I also understand how, it's built in tech industry. So my brain always goes out into the future of what is possible with this. And usually I get excited about positive stuff with AI and every tech out there. But with this case, I was just thinking, oh my God, now if a tech company is actually training their algorithm using my voice and providing that service to the bank, essentially, they could be building my digital signature and sell it somewhere, or maybe to the government, or maybe to some private surveillance entity. And in the future, when I'm just walking the streets, it can say, hey, this person, I hear this voice, and now they can know who is where, and a lot more information. Essentially, you're watching somebody without any judge approving of that. And then there is a lot more inference of, who was with who and where they were at any given point in time. So I wonder if, this data can be used in courts, because courts don't allow for information to be used if you you didn't inform them that you're being video recorded and things like that. So the reason they're even saying that they're recording a voice is just to get that permission. And they say, yes, the user knew that, and they still continue to use us. So it seems like the average user is data in here. I always talk about you about that. Like, we are data. Every day we are data. We're training all these algorithms, whether we like it or not. So, and then you spoke about this is all built by private companies and implemented by private companies. Then there is the government with regulation, far out. And there are so many, I feel optimistic about several people like you who are involved at different levels of the government, or organizations who are working with the government to bring to light right? Different dimensions of this problem, because there is no one side to this problem, because it's bringing the bias that we already have, which means there are going to be people with that bias who are going to argue the other side, right? So are you optimistic of where we are going? What does future look like? Talk to me about, what are our roles? What are the different individuals and orgs that need to come together to, keep us into a, democratic civil society with discourse and fairness?
Yeah, when I was writing this book, I think the majority of the stories I'm sharing are really scary. It can be very terrifying to see the way technology is used in these really, I think, invasive and frightening ways. At the same time, I think I'm also optimistic about the opportunities that presents, because I think recognizing first and being aware of the biases that are introduced by technology, and I think the more aware the public is, the more they are able to scrutinize it, criticize it, and demand some change, right? But I think seeing how many systems have these biases built in, either intentionally or unintentionally, I think that presents a really interesting opportunity for us to actually, if we can fix this, if we can address the biases that are, I think, slowly, digging their roots into different institutions and different parts of our lives, I think we can actually address bias on a scale that we've never seen before, right? But I think this is a really pivotal time, because technology very quickly permeates all aspects of our lives. And I think it's imperfect and it's untested, and we are essentially relying more and more on this technology that we are not really sure if it's working for us or not. And I think until, I think if we allow it to really be so embedded in our day-to-day lives that we can no longer change it, I think there's a real danger there. But I think if we are aware of it now, there is a lot that we can do to make technology, I think, safer, and ultimately, I think, more aspirational, make it work for us. And that's sort of a message that I want to be able to, have the readers take away when they read Machine See, Machine Do.
That's fantastic. So I think that is one of those things that I got, though you were saying you were giving scary examples, you were always very grounded in what is real. What is happening was the bias aspect of it, but you were always giving us hope. So I like that aspect, saying, you're empowered, you can change it. And I like that. It resonates with me, and I'm a believer of, doing things at a grassroots level, so that we are empowered as individuals, we are empowered as part of our communities, and the social organizations that are working, and people like you who are going to school and bringing your knowledge to go do this, to do tech right for us. It just gives me hope. And
So I hope all of you enjoyed the interview that Sudha did with Patrick Lynn, and I'll be sharing the link for the book, and please do have a look at that. And I just hope Emma is here. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Yash. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Emma is our speaker today, and Emma, this is WeeklyWed, and here are students of Sudha, and we welcome you to WeeklyWed. So I'll just make you co-host.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so I'm glad to be here. And actually, I got to know Sudha also through one of the Stanford continuing education class that on autonomous driving about 5 years ago. I joined Sudha in discussing some of the business plan that I was looking at, and it was part of like a class project, but it was a really fun experience in that class as well. Yeah, Yash, can you hear me well, or I should adjust any of the audio, or?
I'm able to hear you.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I think today I'm just going to sort of talk about what I'm working on right now in my professional life, and how kind of like my career trajectory went. if that's of interest to you, and welcome any questions related to any of the things that I talk about. So basically, I'm currently working at Databricks as a product manager and working specifically on the data ingestion aspects with the Lakehouse architecture. And so this is me, Benue Amaleo. And I actually worked at product manager at TigerGraph and MarkLogic before. These are two database companies. TigerGraph is a graph database company, an awesome graph database engine, and MarkLogic is a document database company, also very interesting architecture and solves different use cases. So I've been in kind of a NoSQL world before my experience at Databricks. And when I started my career, I was actually a software engineer at Oracle, working on also complex systems and engineer system products. So I've been in kind of data world for quite a few years, and also very much interested in cloud computing, bring data management tool database into a SaaS platform, as well as the NoSQL multi-model and graph databases. Some of the features that I worked on in the companies now and before is on like developer DBA tools and also containerization. And I was studying at technology and policy program at MIT for my master's degree, and also got bachelor degree in engineering in Harvey Mudd College. So let's see, any questions? Okay, awesome. I think Anya, probably there are folks that I've met before in previous discussions. Okay, so that's how sort of my career developed professionally. In general, I also have a lot of interest in other areas. Like I mentioned that I took the continuing class on autonomous driving, but data in general, big data and data management processing in general is a very, very big interest to me. And complex system design is also very of a big interest to me. So I think it's everything is revolving around data, AI, and the good insights that we can bring to the companies and users. Okay, so actually we can skip over this agenda. I just want to quickly talk about the Databricks Lakehouse overview and slightly short description on one of the ingestion products that I'm working on at Databricks. So Lakehouse is really a concept that Databricks brought in, and we really want to make sure that there is a one platform that consolidates all of your data. And it has the feature for combines with both the data lake type of feature and the data warehouse. So we're kind of a combination of the two, and having bringing the benefits of the both platform and excel into a single source of truth for all their data for your analytics and insights. So we're really looking at if you've used Databricks before. We have, the Lakehouse that houses all of your data. And then we also have the additional AI machine learning features that you can use on top of it. So it serves pretty much all of your needs for many of your data management requirements in your companies. So one of the things with the Lakehouse is we're built on top of a Delta Lake architecture, and also, of course, we also have the Spark engine that's on top to help the processing. But both are open standards, and it's an open source projects that with this type of open approach, we can bring in all the data management and also data governance to all of your Lakehouse data lakes and data warehouses. And with the Delta Lake, there's actually we built in the reliability with the transactions. And we also see that there's a lot of high speed, faster data processing with the indexing. And we're also adding the features in terms of the data governance with fine-grained controls. So all those really kind of enables your team to work concurrently onto the data that you have. That's definitely better than the traditional data lake approach, which you don't have this transactional type of features to guarantee there's no guarantee that there's no data corruption. So Delta Lake definitely has those features that helps you to deal with those issues and challenges in the traditional data lake. As I mentioned, it is a consistent and reliable data quality with the Lakehouse architecture based on Delta Lake. And it's a single source of truth, and you can trust your data because we have a lot of the quality controls built into the way that you do your data pipeline. We also have features such as pipelines, and once you do the ingest, continuous and scheduled ingest into the Delta Lake, you can use features such as Delta Live Table to go through the different levels of tables. We say bronze, silver, gold level data, so that you do your data cleansing and we keep track of the changes. Eventually, you get to the gold level table, which is more enriched data that you can serve as your downstream BI needs and reporting needs and other analytics needs. So that's a super beautiful feature that we kind of integrate everything in this same platform. And also, maybe some of you have noticed that we recently launched a new, benchmark report, and definitely we are very performant for a large amount of data. So we did a TPC DS type of benchmarking report, and with the new Databricks SQL offering, we're actually, almost 3 times faster and 12 times better price performance than other leading data warehouses. So definitely encourage you to read more about this benchmark. So we're performing a lot better in the leading data warehouse and as well. So I also mentioned that we are looking at a simplified governance story for all your data, and governing your updates, deletes, and also data changes. Okay, this is a kind of a summary of all the information that I talked earlier. We really want to make sure that with Delta Lake and Lakehouse with Databricks, you get the data quality aspects and you get better performance, both in the pure, performance, query performance aspect, as well as the price performance. And the governance aspect, we're bringing the fine-grained governance control that I think many of the newer policies and your internal policies might require these, internal data governance for different groups and units. So definitely, that's all built in one platform. Okay. So this is actually one of the Autoloader. This is one of the tools that I work with the ingestion team primarily on. So this is a tool that helps you to bring the data into the Delta Lake Lakehouse architecture in Databricks, and it deals with a lot of incremental loading aspect, and then ensures that it's exactly once ingestion, and it's super scalable. And some of our customers are ingesting petabytes of data per week using Autoloader, so it definitely has been battle tested. And it's available in Python, Scala, and also SQL through Delta Live Table type of interface. I know it's kind of, a bit too much details for this audience, but welcome any questions. Yeah.
Yeah, we have a question from
Okay.
Anand. So which properties of data lake and data warehouse did you guys use in the lake house? So we have
so I think one thing about the data, I think one of the aspect about the data warehouse, data lake is, when people talk about it, maybe they just store data in S3 in kind of a unstructured way. it's definitely like using those storage format. It's very cheap to store it there. However, you know, you might not have the transactional needs that you need, and with the Delta Lake, you actually have those properties that in, you know, other data warehouse that we build on top of, you know, the cheap storage. So it's kind of the good features from both worlds. That's, you know, that's why we are able to achieve the performance in the pure, you know, just the benchmarking perspective and the price performance. So another thing is the data lake actually supports all three different structured data, unstructured data, and semi-structured data. So we're good at all three formats, just as a kind of data lake aspect. But of course, we add on the transaction aspects as well. So that's why we're kind of including the benefits of the both, good benefits of the both data lake and the data warehouse. So it's very performant way for you to have this concurrent team collaboration with transactions that logged into the Delta Lake logs and transaction logs that make sure that you can actually have a group of team to work on this data set together and retrieve the insights. Okay, so I think we actually don't have much time left. So with Autoloader, you know, there's just two different modes. So these are too much into the details. If you are really, really interested, you can go into my presentation. There's actually two presentations that currently talk about ingestion aspect and also a little bit more of the details. You can search for this URL and listen to my recorded webinar. So I did a part 2 of this data ingestion webinar. Has an overview, more detailed overview on the Lakehouse, and then also going to how to ingest the semi-structured data. And there's also another blog that I wrote, sort of explaining some of the semi-structured data ingestion. So this is one thing that we are good at, that a warehouse may be more focused on just the relational database, relational data set. Okay.
Emma, I have a few questions for you. So what about data fascinates you? What is it that drew you to get on this data journey? What inspired you? Yes, data is the new oil and all of that, but I would like to know what drove you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, data is pretty much I would say the new mine to, you know, there's a lot of like gold in the data, that this is a new kind of a currency, right? Where it, like information is, you know, transmitted through the data, like, you know, exchanges and all those. So I think it's very fundamental to much of our generations, you know, new technology and software and everything. So the part that's super interesting is it's vast, but it also takes some efforts to really mine the really good data out of the vast amount of data. So I think that type of investigation, and how do you make the tools to help other people to mine the good insights so that you know you can work on the other aspects of development, which is that's super interesting to me. So the abstraction for me, like, you know, being able to develop tools to help users to abstract the gold piece of data, that's like really wonderful experience for me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Hey, Emma.
Hello.
Hey, this is
Hi.
Ananya. Yeah, we met before. Another question. Awesome work, and yeah, you actually took it to the audience, external audience as well. What KPIs were you driving with this innovation?
So in terms of KPIs, well, we are looking at the ingestion, right? So you mean the whole Lakehouse, or just what I'm looking at my own like journey?
I mean, at Databricks. Yeah, I mean it's a little open-ended,
Right.
but then this is the industry has evolved through like data warehouse, lot of BI data, and then to move to cope with the huge transactional demands. So data lake and all the NoSQL layers, and then now with AI using so much data, we are seeing the need for these architectural innovations. So here you have the lake house. So I mean, it's I'm just looking for your insight into it, maybe what you were driving with your efforts, or what business KPIs you were aligning with. Yeah, just curious about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of speak in general, like across my career, because some of the things that probably is just generally applicable. I wouldn't say that it's like specifically to my current job, but like usually from like if from a PM perspective, looking at the North Star, KPIs, it's pretty standard across, it also depends on like what stage the product is at. Like the standard, number of customers, number of active users, and number of assets they are, like databases and queries and data there are, process on a given frequency. That's definitely like a good KPI to track. So that's almost, those are kind of a standard KPIs that I would say as a data management PM, I will be looking at that. I mean, like there, as a business, there's also just kind of an overall business North Stars that you'll be looking at, right? Like revenue, profit, all those like active users. So I wouldn't say that it's specific to any of the, company I work on. I see that it's a general trend that you'll see in all of the, companies. And then, of course, specifically, I will be looking at some of the detailed, KPIs which I probably should not share here. So that's why I can only talk in general.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
thank you.
I don't know if that's the KPI you're looking at, like how do I do the product management KPI, or like, how do I guide the users to see what their KPI is for data?
Oh, no, totally makes sense. Yeah, the active users or revenue share, or I mean, sometimes it's more drilled down for the use case, but specific use case and the success of the particular use case. So yeah, totally makes sense. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Sometimes like conversion rate from one to the other, that's, also something looking at. Okay, so I was just showing you, if you have never seen the notebook environment, this is the Databricks runtime notebook environment. Of course, we also have, the 3 different persona right now. If you're looking at like data science engineering, and also we have a new brand, SQL environment that it's not notebook based, but there will be like SQL query that you can write. So yeah, just check out. And this is actually a notebook that's available from this blog. So you can, try it in your Databricks account if you have one. So Okay,
Emma,
all right.
any have a Databricks account? Do we need a subscription?
Yeah, so there is actually free trial. So you can definitely sign up for the free trial. I think the specific blog though, you might need a more like a standard trial rather than a free trial. So you can sign up on Azure, AWS, GCP, you know, it's like, it's really easy to sign up and try it. Yeah. Before I joined Databricks, like I also played around with the free trial and standard trial as well. So from a trial user experience perspective, it's actually, as I said, it's relatively cheap. So you know, like you can, if you want to use the standard trial, you can. It's relatively cheap to try things, and of course, there's the free trial as well, which has show you a subset of the functionality. So yeah.
Emma, when
Okay.
we talk about data, the first thing that comes to our mind is privacy issues, the security of data. So how is data security handled in data lakes?
Yeah, so we actually are actively working on the Unity catalog. It's a catalog services that helps with the data governance within the data objects that we have within data lakes. So currently we already have a version of it called table access control. But we're also actively improving and bringing up this new feature, which is in private preview at the moment called Unity Catalog. Let me just find the link for you and you can take a look. And if you are a customer or with us, you can, you know, reach out to your reps, you know, to get into sort of a private preview. So this is actually one of the things that you should really read that.
So Emma, you were talking about data and you showed us there were 3 divisions of machine learning, SQL and data science. So how are they catering to machine learning algorithms? Like how is data represented differently when we want to ingest it to machine learning algorithms and we want them to use this? So is there any differentiating factor here?
Well, so I think that's the beauty of the Lakehouse, that you know, ingest once and into the Delta Lake format, and then you can use the machine learning tool on top of these data sets as well. Of course, because it's, we also work with like image and all those. So like you can insert images as well. And you can use the machine learning tools there to do the experiments you want and use ML flow and all those. So I think if you're looking at just the features, again, it's in one platform, right? So you can, you know, click around in different ones and you will see that, okay, what you actually, you know, and this is a SQL environment. So you can move around really freely. The beauty of it is the data is the same set of data you can, you know, ingest into the data lake and work upon that. So yeah, and then in this different workspaces, you might have different features, right? That feature store, experiments, models. It's mostly just catering for sort of different, you know, persona that's in your organization. So for example, like the SQL analyst or data scientist, SQL analyst may just go to the SQL workspace, and your machine learning data scientist, and you know, they go into the other machine learning workspace, right? And your data team, info team and data engineering team goes to this data science engineering team and looking at how to, let's say, ingest data and process the data to have a better quality so that it feeds into the machine learning team. So if you're looking at this particular, what we're envisioning here with this process is, this is the raw data, and the data team take care of this processing to bronze, silver, and once you get to the gold level, you can, feed into your machine learning team, right? So of course, like if you're already ingesting a very good quality data set that doesn't need additional transformation, you can directly use it, right? So
Emma, we were doing a project and we were thinking of putting our data at a particular place like this and then giving it to our ML algorithm. So yes, we will look at Databricks and we'll see how we can use Databricks for our research projects.
yeah.
Very nice to know. And it was a wonderful session by you. And I want to thank you for that.
Okay, yeah, definitely. If you have more questions regarding Databricks or any of my previous experience, let me know. Yeah.
We'll surely catch up with you. And thanks a lot for coming to WeeklyWed.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Happy holiday season.
Yeah. Happy holidays. Bye.
So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for joining WeeklyWed. WeeklyWed is a happy place to share, learn, explore, and happens every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. Catch you at the next WeeklyWed. Bye-bye.